Stop the madness. Keep it 100. The best talk show on the web is here on STMK Radio 100 with your hosts, Sean L., Let, and Tone the Stone. Come join us from 6 to 8 p.m. Mondays through Fridays. Stop the madness. Keep it 100 with live call-ins, heated discussions about current events, politics, national news, weather, and sports. Join our live online chat room and let your opinion show. Download our phone app. Stop the madness. Keep it 100 on STMK Radio 100. Come join us from 6 to 8 p.m. Mondays through Fridays. The best talk show on the web is here on STMK Radio 100. Call us at 1-866-484-7865. That's 1-866-484-STMK. Stop the madness. Keep it 100. At the Table with Reverend Bill Miller on STMK Radio 100. Check out Reverend Bill Miller's Bible study radio broadcast live on the new STMK Radio 100 at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Please listen in and support him as he joins the realm of broadcasting to encourage believers and offer the comfort of God to others across the airwaves. At the Table with Reverend Bill Miller on STMK Radio 100. Also, feel free to contact him for prayer, counseling, and conversation at brobill9608@yahoo.com. That's BROBILL9608@yahoo.com. At the Table with Reverend Bill Miller on STMK Radio 100.
STMK Radio 100. You're listening to Stop the Madness, Keep It 100 with your host, Sean L., Let, and Tone the Stone on STMK Radio 100.
Yes, this is a PSA, a public street announcement. You are now listening to a Kickback production. Light up your L's, lean back, and listen.
Good afternoon and welcome to Stop the Madness, Keep It 100. I'm your host, Sean L. And tonight we're going to finish out our community summit and our part 3 of police reform or policing reform. After doing the town halls and stuff over the weekend, I like to take the time to thank all the law enforcement officers, all the judges, lawyers, police officers, and police agencies to spend time with us. Today we're going to talk about, finish up our part 3 on policing reform, Doug. And the case we're going to review to close this out, it has really had some high nerves. And we talked about this at the summit, So this is going to really tell us where we at today in America. At the luncheon Monday at the community summit, Doug, a young police officer stood up at the Q&A, and he must have thought I was one of the lawyers or the judges, because he must not have been listening. And this shows why you got to listen to what people have to say. Because he asked me a question, and I think he was more or less trying to chastise him. You know what I mean?
What that was?
Because he said uh, to the person, and he directed his question to me and said that you have to first. It's nice to sit in this building and talk about what a police officer can and can't do and what he's supposed to do. He said, but you got to get out there and sit in that police car, and you got to put on my shoes, and you got to understand what I go through, and you got to understand the split second decisions that I have to make. So I looked at the situation, and my response was epic, because I just smiled, because had he asked the judge that, or he asked one of the lawyers that, or one of the preachers that, or he said that to one of them, he would have had a point.
Exactly.
And he would have been on spot. You know what I mean? When I say he would have been on spot, he'd have been on spot. But my response to him was, and I'm gonna say this because the reason I'm gonna say this is because when you talk police reform or policing reform, everybody has a spot at the table, and everybody has to ask themselves. You have to listen, okay? And everybody can bring something in to change something. But I had to tell him, Doug, and I'm gonna say this, that my response was that I was born a black male in the 50s, and I was raised up in the 60s under Jim Crow law. I had good times with police officers, and I had bad experience with police officers. That's what made me become a police officer for 32 years. I used deadly force, and I've had deadly force used on me. So I understand when he say I can sit on, I should be out there in the car. I understand what he was talking about, because you know what I told him? I can wear your shoes and help you shine them up and put them on the fence. Because not only can I sit on the fence and say, talk about, and I want my audience to know this, not only can I sit on the fence and talk about police reform, because I work for a police department, and we are the third most dangerous city in America.
Third most dangerous city in America.
I was a young black male coming up under Jim Crow law in the 60s. Okay? Think about this. Young black male coming up under Jim Crow laws in the 60s. So I don't have to tell you how I was treated in the inner city, okay? Or the experiences that I have. You can just imagine. There's no need for me to even sit up here and tell you about. So I can look on both sides of the fence, because I walked that walk. And I told him, you know what, young man, the next time you in Indiana and you go into the Heroes Hall of Fame, go to aisle 21A and look up and read that name.
Check me out.
And that right there made everybody in the hall understand that being a law enforcement officer, we don't have to be in your shoes to understand what's going on. You have to portray what's going on and understand that you are the protector of the law.
Surely.
You are the protector of the Constitution. You took an oath. No matter what anybody in the community do, you took an oath, and that oath says that I will treat everyone fairly. Because if the law enforcement officers are not the protectors of the Constitution, then there's no way that all mans are created equal.
Come on now, preach, bro.
And that's what I want my audience to know about this, okay? The show we're going to talk about today is really going to, the case we're going to talk about today, and this is our part 3 airing of police reform and policing reform, and we had the town hall on the back of it. But the case we're going to go into today shows just how divided America is. It shows why the community mistrusts the criminal justice system and the police. It shows why police reform is needed and why policing reform is a must. On the heels of the LA riots and Rodney King's case, okay, the Rampart division.
We all just get along.
If I start naming the cases, this goes all the way back to 1968, 67, when then President Lyndon B. Johnson created, what was that force? He created a commission to oversee violence after all the cities in America was on fire.
That's right. You want to know what case that was?
Yeah, what commission was that, Doug? You got
That
it?
was this case. It goes right to the heart of the executive order of 11412, issued by then President Lyndon B. Johnson, and executive order 11469,
Right.
which was created by Richard Nixon, which establishing the National Commission on the Cause and Prevention of Violence.
Okay, that's what he said. Ex- Come on to your mic. Yeah, there you
Can
go.
y'all
That's
hear
what
me now?
There you go.
Can
there
you hear
go.
me now?
There
Let
you
me
go.
repeat that. This was the case, once again, that goes right to the heart of Executive Order 11412, issued by then President Lyndon B. Johnson, and Executive Order 11469 by Richard Nixon.
Yeah, and Richard Nixon up the committee. That's what he did. He re-upped the committee.
Right.
So what you have to ask yourself right now, and I'm going to say this to everybody, this case shows that black and white America seems to agree on very little these days. And it has anything to do with race or the criminal justice system, we can't agree at all.
What?
The problem with America right now is that we are in a battle. We're in a battle with an argument that this country is just tearing us apart. If it's race or the criminal justice system, everybody knows where you stand or where you're going to fall.
Mm.
And it's like we can't talk. I found that when we was at the community meeting, town hall summit this weekend, and even at the luncheon on Monday, people could not sit down and talk without getting upset or overlooking situations. Okay, law enforcement officers want to talk about uh, the killings of people in the neighborhoods and the crime, but they don't want to talk about what they doing to perceive the community not trusting them. That's a big problem right there, Doug.
It's a huge problem right there, because together we stand, but divided we fall.
Fall. That's what they said. Okay, but tonight, that's right.
Oh, we going there.
Oh, we going because we don't want
We gonna take it to the
everybody
water.
to know, because everybody don't want to believe that the criminal justice system is broken and that law enforcement officers make mistakes. So that's where we at. That's where we at. Okay,
Oh, yeah,
we're
see,
right there.
The
We're right there,
problem with
Doug.
that is some of us think that the justice system is broken, and other of us think that it's not broken.
But tonight on Stop the Madness, keep it 100.
Oh, shucky ducky.
That's right. We're gonna take off the gloves and we
gonna
ain't
take
pulling
it to the
no
water.
punches.
Oh, no. Did you say that?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. Shut the door, kiss Miss Mitchell.
What we're gonna talk about tonight is going to show how ugly things have gotten in America.
That's uglier than me, folks.
We're going to talk about a case that goes 23 years.
We're going
and
to talk about the case.
the case, the most hardening case
The case.
in America. But to take us out there, I want everybody to remember this. June 13th, 1994.
June 1994. Los Angeles. 46-year-old O.J. Simpson sits in a jail cell, accused of murdering his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ronald Goldman. Simpson's lead defense attorney, Robert Shapiro, assembles what the press dubs the Dream Team. F. Lee Bailey, a famed attorney with experience trying murder cases. 2 DNA trial experts, Barry Scheck and Peter Neufeld, and renowned Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz. Simpson adds yet another attorney to the team, Johnny Cochran.
He hit her in the past because he's kicked her and punched her and grabbed her around the neck. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. That's what I'm asking you to do. Stop this cover-up. Stop this cover-up. If you don't stop it, then who?
October 3rd, 10 a.m. An estimated 150 million viewers tune into live coverage, and a crowd of more than 1,000 people gather outside the courthouse.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder upon Nicole Brown Simpson. We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty of the crime of murder upon Ronald Lyle Goldman.
Tonight in Studio 51,
What you say?
we're going to talk the O.J. Simpson case.
Oh, boy.
The case that set the criminal justice system on fire. Tonight with me, as always, sitting in the funny chair is my main man, Doug Million, holding up the world.
Woo! What up, y'all?
Player, what's happening today, player? What's happening? The chat room's fired up, man.
Deep, man, I know they going off the deep end, and I know chat room that y'all looking around right now, and everybody out there that's catching us live looking around, and y'all see that chair empty.
Right, because you know they asked in the chat room about Sax Man.
Sax man, and flew the coop.
Sax had to work today.
Sax Man flew
Okay,
the coop.
we not. He had to work today, so the law enforcement correspondent could not make the main show tonight because he had to work over, but he will be back with us next week when we're talking about Trump.
He's corresponding in the streets right now. He's taking care of the streets right now. He's taking care of the streets.
But before we go into the O.J. Simpson case tonight, I want to talk about 2 cases that brings us into this era that's going to take us back to the case we want to talk about, because we're talking about police reform and policing reform. Police reform is policies, training, administrative, and the way that things are done in the criminal justice system itself. Policing reform is the way the officers interact with the community and what they do when they're out in the community or when they're handling the case or investigating the case. But there's
your ass when they get you wrong.
Well, after we get into this, because we're going to talk about some cases. But the 2 cases I want to talk about really comes to the issue. And the first case is the issue of police reform. There's a case out of Florida where a well-trained SWAT officer was training a citizen police academy.
I heard the words, well-trained.
And he violated every rule there ever was because he introduced live ammunition into a classroom setting.
A through Z plus PXY.
Now, I don't have to tell you what I'm going to say next, but a innocent civilian was killed in the classroom by that officer after he introduced live ammunition.
Live ammo, buster.
Okay, so he's being charged right now with manslaughter, and he's facing 30 years in prison and a $10,000 fine if he gets convicted. But what makes this case even more twisted and more to the form of police reform, remember last show we was talking about the commissions, and we was talking about the anti-police was putting people in place to address their concerns, and I didn't want to call people anti-police, but since you got your pro-police group, and they labeling Black Lives Matters and everybody's anti-police. So for everybody can know, because I'm gonna stay with the chat room's terminology, it's not mine.
Well, I ain't anti-police.
I'm not anti-police neither, and I'm not, but I'm pro-police. Let me just say this, because our law enforcement correspondent is not here. I am pro-police and retired law enforcement officer, but I'm gonna call it as I see it.
Black Lives Matter.
Okay, so that's all right, because I'm gonna call it as I see it, and I'm gonna call Black Lives Matter as I see it. I'm gonna call it the Sea of Blue as I see it.
Black
So
Lives Matter. I respect the police, but Black Lives Matter.
and I'm with you on that. Black Lives Matter. I'm with
Black
you on that.
Lives
Okay,
Matter.
but
White lives matter.
all lives matter.
Yellow lives
Right.
matter.
I'm gonna tell you
Green lives
I'm gonna
matter.
tell you like I told a guy in the summit over the weekend, folks, and I want everybody in the chat room and everybody else to answer this question. Do blue lives matter bother you? If I say blue lives matter, does that bother you?
Nope.
Okay. Do all lives matter bothers you?
No.
Okay, so when somebody say Black Lives Matter, why do it bother somebody?
Because some folks feel like that's racist.
Well, let me tell you this.
You specific. You point. See, they're not getting their message across. I understand what it stands for, but they're not getting the message.
But let me tell you how I put this to them. If Black Lives Matters bother you, then it's not the word black that bothers you.
It's lives mattering.
Okay. Right. Okay. Because if blue lives matter doesn't bother everybody, if all lives matter doesn't bother anybody, Black Lives Matter shouldn't bother anybody neither. So
Right.
so when and I'm talking to judges, lawyers, and I'm talking to rooms full of police officers and people of the community. Okay. So if that word Black Lives Matter bother you, you have another problem.
Yeah.
And that problem can't be solved by anybody sitting in the room.
In the room,
Okay,
whether
think
you
about
black, blue, white, purple, green, or yellow.
But what I want to talk about is the new era. Something is happening that has never happened in law enforcement before. In this case, they are charging the chief of police in this case with vicarious liability. The chief of police is now facing a charge of culpable negligent homicide, which is a misdemeanor, and he can get 60 days in jail
60 days.
if he's found guilty. And folks, that is in Florida, the state of Florida. And who is Florida run by? A Republican governor and a Republican legislator. And the Republicans put that law on the books. Okay?
Yep.
Think about that. Didn't the police unions back Donald Trump? Now, well, we're gonna go ahead and move on because I don't want to go into this because we want to get into the OJ case because we got a lot to cover and a lot to talk about. The second case is a case of policing reform. Okay, this is out of Anaheim, California, and this is another situation that turned bad. Kids walking on somebody's grass, and they come out and pull a pistol out on them, grab the kid, and shoot the gun in the ground. Okay, coming to find out, it was a police officer. Okay, for the LAPD, and we're talking about the LAPD tonight.
So what? Old man Simpson just hollering, "Get the hell out of my
No,
yard!"
no.
And all mine now.
When the police respond, they arrested the two boys. Okay, two juveniles. They didn't arrest the police officer for shooting or discharging a weapon. Now the DA and everybody else is scrambling right now because they got to decide now if they're going to charge the officer with felonious assault or if they're going to charge him with another crime.
How about just discharging a firearm within city limits?
Well, he grabbed a juvenile and had a juvenile when the weapon was discharged.
Oh, that's a whole nother case.
So the mayor's upset, the council's upset, but then the police chief gets up and say, we know where to go get him if we need him. But then when the councilman got up and said, had he not been a police officer and done this, what would you have done?
Whole nother program.
And the chief said he had arrested him for felonious assault on a juvenile.
See, that's crazy.
So those two cases speaks to what we're speaking to today. But we're going to get right into the fire of the house.
Boy.
Okay?
Oh, we're going to burn this mother
We're going to go right
down.
to the fire. Let's go back to what happened. Okay. June 13th, 1994. We all know Nicole Brown and a friend Ronald Goldman was found outside the house, her Brentwood mansion, murdered. They had head wounds, knife wounds, her throat was cut and everything. I mean, real, real bad. Okay. Uh, for
23 years.
about 2.5 hours, their body lays out there, and then her dog comes out and takes somebody back to the house. They find the body. The detectives found a bloody glove at the scene that was left. Okay, and then they went to OJ's house to notify OJ that
Something was wrong.
something was wrong, and one of the detectives seen what he thought was blood at 5:30 in the morning on the vehicle. We're gonna talk about that a lot
On the
lot.
door.
Okay, and then they jumped over the wall and went into Simpson's house and did searches and all that. Then they come back and got a warrant out for OJ because they found the bloody glove and they found blood spots. They found socks with blood and all this stuff. And OJ went on the great Bronco chase through LA. We know all about that.
35
Okay.
miles an hour.
But what we don't really know is actually what happened when all that went down. Okay. And OJ was arrested with murder. So then they had a series of cases that went went to Cal. First, it was the preliminary hearing, and then the grand jury hearing, and people testified, and they testified to OJ's and all this stuff.
Right, because there's a whole process that goes along with this.
Right. Then the police maintained the two stories. We're gonna get the two stories here because I want everybody to remember there's three stories that was told, and we're gonna match them all back down because we're gonna go into the main trial. That in the Brown Cole was Simpson was putting her kids to bed, getting ready to take a bath. Ronald Goldman was bringing the glasses back to her.
He was bringing a pair of sunglasses that apparently was left at a restaurant in which she dined, and and he just happened to be there or a waiter there.
Now, this is something I want everybody to understand and remember this right here. Ronald Goldman was a young, fit, black belt male. He was 6'2", about 230, black belt.
Said to be badass.
Right. And he knew his craft very well. Right. So let's go right into this, the start of the trial. The players of the trial was Marsha Clark, Darren, what was his name?
Chris Darden.
Chris Darden. You had the Dream Team, Johnny Cochran. You heard him know all them.
Mark Kardashian, who was a friend of O.J. Simpson's, was involved.
Right. So let's go right here and right down right there. You had F. Lee Bailey. People in our hometown should remember F. Lee Bailey from the Sam Shepard case.
Right.
Okay, he was here in Sam Shepard case that he got off.
Very prominent lawyer.
Right, very prominent lawyer. He got Sam Shepard off. Then they went into this. So let's go at the end. The drama ended 474 days after OJ was arrested.
Right.
Okay, then you had the players that was in it. Tom Lang, Detective Mark Furman, the season of homicide detective, Detective Van Adder, who was the lead detective in the situation. And you had all this going on. So let's go into this situation right here, and we're going to break it down on the start of the case. You had the trial, you had a jury verdict, and then you had you had a
then you had don't forget the media. You had the media involved because this was highly anticipated.
Oh, you heard what the guy said earlier. 10 million people just watched the preliminary hearing. So you look at this. Let's go right here. Okay, so everybody.
It was like a weekly. It was like a daily sitcom.
Right. So let's look at this. So when we go into this right here, Barry Check you had as attorney, and we go in deep into the OJ's case. People want to know, and I see the chat room saying, okay, you put us there. I want everybody to get in there and try to get your mind together because, believe it or not, that was 23 years ago.
23. That's what
some of the people that we're talking to right now wasn't even born.
Wasn't even born yet.
Some of the law enforcement officers we talking to was like 10 or 7 or wasn't even born yet.
Wasn't even sure they was going to make it to the academy.
No, they wasn't even on Earth.
That's what I'm saying. Some
The
of these
kids that
folks
going
wasn't even
right,
here.
right. The kids that was at the town hall summit and the meeting, they were like 21 years old.
Yeah.
The OJ case is older than they are.
Uh-huh.
So when you look at it and see that it's older, they wasn't even police officers then. They don't
Right.
even know what's going on.
Right. Right. I, on the other hand, was a little boy growing up when O.J. Simpson was in the midst of his football career. I remember we used to play street ball. That's back when we was playing street ball, and that's back when. Everybody wasn't a superstar back then, and we go out there and I'm Greg Pruitt. I'm this guy. I'm that guy, and everybody in my neighborhood, man,
Well,
we used to fight over who was gonna be O.J.
But you have to look at this. We're
Jukes.
not even talking about his football career.
Right.
We're talking about 474 days of his life 23 years ago when the people we're talking to right now at the town hall didn't even exist. And you have to look at this. So when you look at the crime, 2 people got killed at one time. Very sad.
Which is sad.
Which is very
a
sad
very
situation.
Sad thing.
Okay. And then you have the murder scenes. And what we're going to go into right now, we're going to keep moving down the line. Let's go into the 3 murder scenes that we have. We have Bundy.
Mm-hmm.
Bundy is where Nicole Brown Simpson was found with Ronald Goldman.
That's right.
And let's talk about some of the stuff at the murder scene on Bundy so everybody can understand where we're coming from and what we're talking about here. On Bundy, you had the one glove and knit cap
Right.
that was put down on the grass where Ronald Goldman's body was found.
Right.
You had 2 bodies. You had Nicole Brown's body.
You had Nicole Brown Simpson.
Right. She was almost decapitated.
Right.
You had Ronald Goldman.
For y'all that don't understand, her head was nearly severed from her body.
That's correct. Then you had all the blood work. Okay.
Right.
Then you had the famous black back gate that had blood, didn't have blood on it when they took the pictures and all that. And then 3 weeks later they come back.
3 weeks later
they have blood.
It was covered in blood.
We're gonna talk about that also. So then you come back to where when you leave Bundy, because that's where the gloves, the hats, and all that stuff that they say that Ronald Goldman was in a fight for his life. The coroner says that his hands were swollen and bones was almost broken, like he was beating a brick wall.
Right.
Remember, Ronald Goldman was a black belt.
This man and for those of you who don't know who has never trained in the martial arts or MMA or even worked out, when you are considered a black belt, that is a very high degree in martial arts. That means you know what you're doing. You practice, you study, and if he was a black belt and considering who he was and where he came from, he had probably studied since he was a small child.
But look at this. If his hands were that beat up like he was fighting a wall,
how come O.J. Simpson?
No, we're not gonna ask that question yet. No, Doug, go back.
Right,
go back.
I'm gonna back up.
Really
I'm excited about this.
Really back in. Really back in. That's what we was gonna ask Sax if he would have been here, because that's the question.
Hey Sax, I got a question for you. Oh, never mind.
That's the $1,000 question.
Yeah.
So you can't put it out first, okay? What you doing? Hey, have you ever watched the Class Explosion show?
Yeah.
They never put the main prize out on the board to the 3rd round, okay?
I'm sorry, chat room. They with me though, ain't they?
Yeah, they with you. The chat room really going.
they
Now,
on fire.
So that was at the Bundy scene. So let's all that's tied in now, so you know that's Bundy scene. Let's go to Rockingham. Rockingham is O.J. Simpson's estate. Estate. They get there. The police get there at Rockingham about 5:30 in the morning. Dark
30. Old dark 30, as we call it.
Ain't nothing there. Okay. And we're gonna talk about that. We ain't gonna go into the evidence yet, but Detective Mark Furman, who took a walk by himself to this vehicle in the dark, claims to discover a dime, half a dime size, a millimeter size.
About half the size of a fingernail.
At the fingernail, of blood on the door.
Yeah.
A
droplet.
Right. So they use that as their prelude to jump the fence and get into O.J. Simpson's house and search around, and then they found the bloody glove.
Right.
Now, once they found the bloody glove, they knew they had to get a search warrant, so they went and got a search warrant. They come back and they found all this blood and all this blood evidence, and then they found blood on the socks. We're gonna talk about the blood on the socks and
Dig it
everything.
now.
Okay. So when they got the blood on the socks and everything, then they went out. Okay, and that's crime scene number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The criminalist in them hasn't even been to crime scene 1 yet, so now they got 2 crime scenes
Yeah,
to
2
take
crime
crime
scenes.
scenes to take care of.
2, not
Okay.
1, but 2.
So let's go to the 3rd crime scene and set all the scenario up. The 3rd crime scene, okay? They went to outside and where they found the blood at on the Bronco.
Truck.
The Bronco now is a crime scene,
Right.
okay? And we're going to talk about that crime scene with the Bronco very, very much because guess what? Inside the Bronco, they seen a shovel with
Shovel.
some plastic, okay?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about that because that really is going to throw a wing into the case.
A monkey wrench, y'all.
Also, they talked about blood spots and blood stains observed when pictures was taken. And then when the vehicle was towed, it wasn't secured. And then when they went out there to get it again, they found smears of blood.
Smears of blood.
Okay.
Now,
And we're going to
now,
talk about that. Okay.
Now, listen, chat room. He said first there was droplets of blood, splattered blood, and then when they went back, it was smeared blood.
So now that set the scene for what happened that night when O.J. Simpson and his wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and all them was killed. And O.J. is the only man in America. I'm not gonna say the only man in America,
Mm-hmm.
but he has no alibi, and he has nobody that knows where he was at, and nobody's seen him. Now you have to ask yourself: is that a coincidence, or is that just plain bad luck? That's what you got to ask yourself. That
Whew.
is that a coincidence, or is that just plain bad luck?
Whew. Whew. Considering who he was,
Bad luck.
you have to chalk that up to bad luck.
Okay, so we're going to go right now into let's talk about the evidence at all 3 scenes because this is where it really gets into where we're getting ready to really cut the mustard right here. Okay, so Doug, let's go this. Let's go to Bundy.
Bundy.
The evidence at Bundy was the bloody glove.
That was the bloody glove.
Remember the glove?
Now, also remember, this is where the bodies were found.
Right.
This is the main crime scene. This is the first crime scene. This is where the family pet, the dog, was found wandering the streets looking for somebody to just.
So let's go
back.
let's go with Bundy.
Mm-hmm.
And Bundy was the bodies.
The bodies, 2 dead bodies.
2. The hat,
bloody hat, skull cap, like the one I'm wearing right now.
Glove.
And a glove. Those type of gloves.
Oh, you did bring the hat.
Huh? Yeah.
It might fit. You don't get acquitted.
Huh?
If it fits, you don't get acquitted.
See, I ain't done nothing, so I ain't worried about it.
Okay. Then you had blood evidence.
Right.
Okay, and that's at Bundy.
You had a lot of blood.
Okay.
Now you remember this woman was almost decapitated, so she had
so
bled out.
You had a mixture of blood.
You had an abundance of
you
blood.
had her blood, you had
his blood,
and then
the
they say and the killer's blood because they say the killer had to be injured.
They had to be.
And he had
this
cuts.
man's hands was swollen and beaten like he had been beaten upon a brick wall.
Okay, so let's go right here to Rockingham. You had the mate to the bloody glove found in Rockingham.
Right, which meant.
And the chat room, I want you to write all this down because I see the homicide investigator and the other investigator right here going into the thing, and they want us to chronological run the thing, and then they want to ask what the significance is and how the police did this. I'm going to tell you that if you let me get up to it, okay? I'm trying to get the audience build up first, and then I'm going to go in, and then me and you and the LAPD is going to have a dance.
I'm gonna go along with y'all.
Okay, we're gonna have a dance. So I see where my side is building up over here, and I see where the other side is over here was really interested in doing because they putting good stuff in here, and I see where the police right now is really getting their case together, and they want to come. They want wait a minute, they want to rumble, so they want to tell me that they want the facts. So that's all we're gonna give you is the facts.
I am not anti-police.
Well,
wrong is wrong.
Well, I'm going to give the facts to you. Okay, so we're gonna go to Rockingham.
Just the facts, lady. Just the facts.
At Rockingham, we have the mate to the bloody glove
The mate to the bloody glove.
and a whole lot of blood evidence.
A whole lot of blood evidence.
Right. So we're just gonna go there. We're just gonna go there. We're not gonna go back into it. So give me a minute there, Doug. We'll give a minute.
A whole lot of blood.
Right. Now let's go to
The truck.
the truck. And in the truck we have a whole lot of blood evidence.
Crime scene
And
number
and,
3.
and and instead of saying blood evidence, let's tie it all in and call it the proper name. DNA.
DNA.
Okay.
Dana.
Now, we're gonna go to the thing of this right here. And we're gonna go back into this, okay? OJ Simpson isn't about race because the judge wasn't going to allow race even in the courtroom unless they could prove that the officers was racist or something happened with race. Okay, remember
Right.
that was the first ruling. No race, nothing in there. Okay,
And aside from that, you got to look at Orenthal James Simpson. Okay, O.J. Simpson, the football star, the movie star, the man. He was the whitest black man.
right? He didn't.
Ever.
Right, he didn't relate to black issues, and he didn't relate to black activists and none of that. So we knew that. So let's go right here. Let's okay. We talked about the crime scenes, and then when we talked about the crime scenes, we talked about the blood that was found. I mean, the evidence that found at the crime scene. But let's go right here. Evidence that was found at the crime scene.
Uh-huh.
Let's go back because we did it both. What was found in evidence. So we forgot to tell you about the blood on the back gate.
Yeah, we spoke about the gate,
Right,
but
right.
we just didn't. And we did speak about the
Right.
blood on the gate.
Well, we
in the
didn't say
beginning.
that about the evidence found because
Right,
we come back.
right.
Okay.
So we're going back.
No,
now.
so now let's ask this question right here, okay? With all this DNA evidence on O.J. Simpson,
Right.
with O.J. being valid,
Mm-hmm.
with them going in, and two things that I wanted to say with you because we talked about this on the last show, and I think me and you really got into it on the last show. Going back into somebody's past and talking about their misconduct,
Right.
because that happened on two people right here, okay?
Right.
O.J. Simpson, they went into a diary and they came back talking about how violent he was and how
all
he
the,
how he beat
domestic-
Nicole
the
and the domestic violence.
situation
Okay,
of that and how, yeah.
and
yeah.
then on the defense side,
Mm-hmm.
they've got some information about Mark Furman. They want to use.
Mike Furman.
Okay.
Mark Furman, right.
And the way that information came out to the O.J. Simpson defense trial is that a reporter filed
Mhm.
a public record request and got Mark Furman's file and seen that he attempted to get a disability on a mental and some of the things that he told the LAPD why he wanted his mental
Which
disability.
opened up a whole nother book.
That's why, wait a minute, but that's why the judge wouldn't allow anything about race into the courtroom. And this is what me and you was talking about. That was show 2 of our crime summit. Remember,
Right.
I said that a person's personnel file should not be omitted into anything that he's done
Absolutely.
because then it becomes
then-
distorted.
then,
The
then it
thing.
becomes distorted, and it becomes people want to pull a race card, whichever
What-
side of the coin you
Wait,
on.
but not only that,
And not only
but
that,
but he's guilty.
by association,
he
he's
was
guilty by default.
No, he was guilty because once they put this information out, being the case the way it was, and being the way the case developed, and it just totally took it to a new level.
A whole new level.
And this is what I was talking about when I told you that if I shot somebody and they got my personnel file and I had some problems,
Right.
we're not no longer
should
talking
not-
about that incident of my shooting. We talking about what happened 20 years ago.
Right.
Okay, but this is the problem I have. So we're gonna jump down to right here. We're gonna go right here, and I got the guy in the chat room, the homicide detective. we're not going to even talk. We're going to push police misconduct back out the window for a minute, okay?
Right.
We're going to talk about the three different stories first, okay? Because I'm not going to give y'all a chance until next hour, because the next hour we're going to break down.
Yeah, because this is not a short show.
Right. Me and the police sitting right here. I got use of force officers right here. I got LAPD officers here, and everybody talking about it. And they want me to chronological break down what's going on because they keeping their notes, and then they want me to explain actually what's going on. And I did my homework, so I'm ready for them. Okay,
Right.
I did my homework.
Right.
Sex man, I got A on homework. Okay,
Hey, Sax.
so
Sax. Homework has been done. The paper
so
has been turned in.
So I know we're going to have our conversation. So let's go here. I'm going to go to the prosecutors first.
Come on.
Because the O.J. Simpson case speaks to the highest level of prosecutor misconduct and supervisory misconduct. Remember, we talked about that show too.
Misconduct. Right.
Because somewhere down the line, the supervisors on the LAPD turned a blind eye.
Yes, because in the first place, and I read several articles on this, and I read several books about this, but it was one book that sticks out in my mind, and that's Marsha Clark's book. When the prosecution first got this case, they thought to themselves, and they openly spoke and said, "This is an open and shut case."
Well, you know why? Because of DNA.
Yeah,
and it's actually with all the DNA evidence, it should have been an open and closed case.
and it absolutely should have been an open
and
and shut case.
the guy
But
right here. Wait a minute, before you go anywhere. L.A. first grade detective, I got you right there because yes, this should have been an open and closed case.
But you pointed it out. They turned a blind eye.
Well, I'm not even gonna go that far, okay? Because we're gonna go into prosecutor misconduct before we go into police misconduct, okay? Because when I say they turned a blind eye,
That's what I'm talking about.
right. When I say they turned a blind eye, okay, I mean that somewhere in the LAPD, and I'm gonna say numerous cases that Internal Affairs had on Mark Furman, okay, that should have been thoroughly investigated down instead of passed off. I'm going to say letters that came in. We're going to talk about letters, but we're going to go back into the point because we're going to do a whole thing on Mark Furman, okay? So when I say prosecutor misconduct, I mean that they had information that by law they had to disclose to the defense, that they didn't do.
That they did not do.
They also had information from investigators from their office and LAPD officers telling them Mark Furman is not the guy you want to go into court with.
Absolutely not.
Darden, in the book you're talking about.
Even Darden told them, because they tried to make Darden be the one to take him, to pull him on the table. He said, "I'm not going to do it. You don't want to touch it. This is not the guy you want to
But
talk
see,
to."
let me tell you this. When the case is all wrapped around, okay, and we know this, Mark Furman found the glove. Mark Furman found the blood
on the truck.
Mark Furman was the instigator for them going over the wall.
That's right.
Mark Furman is also the one that found all the evidence. So,
absolutely,
that's the prosecution right there. Mark Furman is the man of the case. And I want to tell everybody, last week when we did the summit and we did the show, we talked about police officers posting on social media saying nasty things or saying things.
Right.
Guess what? In 1994, they didn't have social media, but they had tapes. And Mark Furman's words that he was doing, whether he was doing it to make money, whether he was doing it to try to get into a movie.
And you had a different type of people.
Well, it doesn't make a difference because all that stuff that he did, no matter whether he was a homicidal racist who was going to wipe out the black things, because some of the things he said was very, very bad. He wanted to group all black people together and bomb them or set them on fire.
Most cases, he wanted to plug them all. He wanted to line them up on the wall
and shoot them like they did the Jews.
Like in the
so he had some
that sort of thing.
Right. He had some views that was very hard and racial.
Right.
And
some views that were very hard to accept as a whole.
Right. Not only that, the courts would not have allowed none of this into the court.
That's right.
But had it not been for his record that he left a trail. Okay, not only did he talk about women, he talked about the judge's wife.
Yeah.
He talked about
He talked about everybody.
everybody.
He talked about spouses from the prosecution. He not only talked about the judge's wife, but he talked about the spouses from the prosecution. He talked about Simpson and his people. He talked about Nicole
Right.
and her people.
And he said, and let me quote this because I read about 4 or 5 books, and the best one I read that the Goldman's own, If I Did It.
Yeah, if
Okay.
I did it.
But let me tell you this. Now, here's a case of one man who makes or break the case. That's Detective Mark Furman.
Mark Furman.
Now we're going to go into the point, and this is what LAPD been looking for.
Oh, boy, here
But
it comes.
before we go there, but I'm not going to do that to you. I'm going to make you wait. The 3 different stories, because you need to hear the 3 different stories, because when we get into the evidence and we get into what's happening, the police says that Ronald Goldman fought for his life, and Nicole Brown got killed first. Ronald Goldman walked up and he fought for his life, and then he got killed. Okay.
Mhm.
The coroner says that OJ, and I'm gonna say OJ because he's the only suspect,
Okay.
was choking Nicole Brown and stabbing her and getting ready to cut her throat, and the glove came off.
Mm-hmm.
And she took her nails and dug into his fingers
finger.
and stuff. That's what
Right.
caused the cuts and everything. And we're gonna talk about that. So remember that. But that's when the glove and the hat came off.
Right.
Okay. If that's when the glove and hat came off, then why wasn't it up by the stairs?
Absolutely.
Because what they're saying is that that's how she got the droppings of the blood on her back
Right.
that they never tested. So we're gonna talk about mistakes the police made coming down. We're gonna talk about that. So let's go right into the issue right here.
Mm-hmm.
What was the police misconduct? And this is a question from the chat room. So since y'all gonna push me there, what was the police misconduct, Sean L? So I'm gonna tell you right here. Here go the police misconduct, and we're gonna go right down the line. Commander Percy told Detective Van Adder to go and first of all, let's go back. Mark Furman and his partner, Lane, was dispatched to the homicide because they had in LA. You got district homicide officers and you got downtown robbery homicide.
Right.
They came to the murder scene. Okay, once the police officials found out that it was O.J. Simpson and this was going to be a high-profile case, they didn't want the local police officers dealing with it. They wanted downtown robbery homicide to deal with it.
Right.
That's the first mistake that they made. Well, I'm gonna go on a number of mistakes first, and I'm gonna come back on misconduct. That's the first mistakes they made.
Okay.
The second mistake they made is that none of their officers were properly trained to secure or handle a crime scene. Okay, because they had too many specialized units. So that means when the first responders came and found the body, they made some very, very big mistakes. They trampled through the blood. They brought
touched stuff.
They touched stuff, but not only did they touch stuff, they brought sheets out of the house and introduced new evidence to
into
the crime
evidence
scene.
that was already
Okay,
there.
and this is the problem that I have about with OJ. OJ been in that house. OJ slept in that house.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you bring in stuff out of the house,
Hell, he paid rent there.
right? Well, he owned it. So, but when you bring all that stuff out, you're introducing evidence.
You
in,
introducing evidence into, like you said, an already
okay,
existing.
so that's
crime
the
scene.
second mistake they made.
2.
The third mistake they made is when the first 2 homicide detectives got there, they went through the crime scene and made notes. But when they was told to stand down because robbery homicide is coming, they disregarded their notes.
Disregarded their
Okay,
notes. Right.
so you talking about 2 hours of them standing around.
Mistake number 3.
And I want everybody to understand this 2 hours they standing around because this is very important when I break it back down when we go talk about Furman. We're coming up in 10 minutes. We're going to take Furman into the hour. It's very important. I want you to remember this. They're standing around from 1 o'clock, from 12:15 a.m. to about 3:30 a.m. doing nothing. They didn't call the criminalists. They didn't call the coroner. They doing nothing.
Didn't call CSI.
No, Van Adder got.
They stood down.
No, right. Van Adder got the call, and he lives an hour away from Brentwood.
Mm-hmm.
So he's coming in.
Right.
Not only as he's coming in, they got every commander, every sergeant, every lieutenant, everybody who want to be somebody on the shift, every homicide person, everybody, SI, I mean, everybody is coming to the scene. Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, mistake number 4. When the criminals finally got to the scene,
Contaminated.
okay, now it is contaminated. They didn't follow proper procedure in collecting evidence and doing stuff. And we're going to talk about that because now we know the 3 different stories. The police is saying, go back to that. The police is saying that OJ and Ron was fighting for his life.
Right.
And that's how the hat and glove came off. So you got 3 competing stories there, from prosecutor to the coroner's office, medical examiner, and then the police.
And then the police officer.
Okay. So with all this evidence that's there, all this blood evidence and all this going on, we're going to go back to the collection of the blood evidence. And we're going to ask yourself right here, in the thing, because I see the LAPD looking at me and they still want to know police misconduct because they want me to prove the case. So I'm getting ready to prove.
He said he going to get there.
Right. I'm going to prove the case there for you. Just give me a minute.
Hold on a minute.
So now they have to collect this evidence. And they get the criminalists there, Fong, okay? And they get the master, well-renowned pathologist, Dr. Henry Lee, that everybody in America looking at, okay? Henry Lee, don't blame OJ because he had the money to question and challenge the prosecution findings. Because I'm going to ask this question too, because LAPD going to be in there and they trying to jump on me and everything. But let me say this. How many OJs are sitting in jail right now?
Bunch of them.
Okay? Because everybody doesn't have the money or the ability to hire well-renowned lawyers to question what somebody do. And I'm talking about we can question what the LAPD did because we getting ready to go into it. And I'm not going to say it was a mistake. I'm not going to say that they didn't do this. I'm going to say it right here. As being a law enforcement officer for 32 years, this is police misconduct at the highest level.
At the highest level.
And I'm talking about the highest level. I'm going all the way to the chief who turned a blind eye. I'm coming back down. I'm going to go right here.
And LAP. Not anti-police.
Well, I'm going to tell you, wrong. And I'm not anti-police, but I'm going to tell you this. It's misconduct at the highest level. People have to ask themselves, how was this allowed to happen? People say police officers don't lie. They say police officers are honorable. They say they back all their police officers. And everybody want to believe in police officers. But I'm going to tell you right here, there's no way in hell's name that even police officers could turn a blind eye unless they crazy. Because we're going to go step by step right here. We're going to go Mark Furman's partner, okay? Mark Furman's partner says that he didn't know about Furman's contact with Nicole Brown and O.J. Simpson in 1984.
What?
He also said that the only reason he went to Rockingham is because he knew where it was at, and Van Adder and them was from downtown, okay? He said that he never was told by Mark Furman, and he never told nobody about O.J. in 84. Mark Furman seeing O.J. in 84. Remember those 3 things.
Now, this is your partner.
Right. Tom Lane says that when him and Van Adder got to the scene, they didn't do any investigation. They didn't do anything. Now, these your 2 main homicide.
Right. The 2 main
homicide detectives. They just told the other 2 to stand down. These 2 coming to take over.
These 2 are coming to
They didn't do anything because when they got there, the commander told them, go over to OJ's house and notify OJ of the murders. Okay? They turn around and took 2 individuals. Here go another mistake and misconduct. They turned around and took 2 individuals, so that's 4 police officers, from a crime scene to another crime scene, which wasn't a crime scene at the time, but they made it a crime scene.
It wasn't a crime scene,
but they made it.
Of course, they made it a crime scene because they didn't took DNA from the first crime scene
over to the
second.
There you go.
Scene.
There you go.
Oh boy, chat room fired up.
Now the second misconduct, okay, was when Detective Van Adder said that he came on scene after driving an hour and a half. They was told to go to notify OJ. They went to OJ house and they was ringing the bell. Didn't see anything.
Right.
Mark Furman called him almost a half a block to the Bronco.
Mm-hmm.
5:30 in the morning. Okay, they got to use a flashlight to look in the windows to see this shovel.
Old dark.
Okay.
30. You talking on the West Coast?
But they see this blood. And this
Mhm.
little speck of blood made all four of these officers think that there was a mass murder that just took place in OJ's mansion.
Yet, when they finally caught up with O.J. Simpson, they
Well,
treated
no,
him.
we ain't gonna go with that yet.
Okay.
We're not gonna go with OJ.
Alright,
Leave
alright.
OJ out of this. OJ
Leave
has
O.J.
nothing.
out of it.
OJ has nothing to do with this.
He had nothing to do with it.
LAPD in the chat room. People from LAPD in the chat room want to know what is the police misconduct. They want me to make my charge on police misconduct first before we go any further
Okay,
in the
go
show.
ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Then Van Adams jumps, make the decision from that little speck of blood, jump the wall,
To jump the wall.
that there was misconduct. They go get OJ's daughter.
Uh-huh.
She has to let him in the house.
Right.
Now, Van Aders, okay, and I'm going to go back into this because everybody don't know this. Van Adder goes back, and everybody's in the house. They talking about that they was worried about a mass murder taking place.
Right.
But they let this little girl walk into the house before them.
Oh yeah.
They let this little girl walk around the house.
Oh yeah.
They didn't even search the house.
Wouldn't you say that that's police misconduct?
No, not yet. Not yet.
No?
Not yet. Because I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they jumped the wall with the good the good
I ain't talking about the
wait,
jumping
wait,
on the
wait,
wall.
wait a minute, with the good intentions that there was a mass murder there,
I
okay?
ain't talking about the jumping on the wall and say, okay, this is a mass murder area, crime scene going on. Little girl, you go in first.
No, but that wasn't what that's what they thought, but that's what they do. So, and then they got Kato Kalin, okay?
Kalin.
Okay.
Kato
And then,
dumbass Kalin.
But this is the kicker part right here, and for the officer in the LAPD, here I go. I'm gonna wing you one more time. I'm not gonna hit you good. I'm gonna wing you one more time. Okay, is that they let a detective who has already been removed off the case conduct an investigation that they should have been conducting on a crime scene or a scene that they just entered.
I'm gonna say it again. I'm not anti-police.
Okay.
But wrong is wrong.
Now we're gonna go. We're not even gonna go. We went to all three of those officers right there. Okay, we went to all three of those officers, but we're gonna stay on Van Adams. Okay, because Van Adams is the lead detective.
The lead detective.
This is the guy that's in charge of everything.
This is the guy that's supposed to be the elite.
Once
the smartest of the
once he
smartest.
comes in, he finds Farman comes back to him and tell him to talk to Kato Kalin. He says he's talking to Kato Kalin. Furman disappeared for 15 minutes. And then he comes back and tell everybody he found a bloody glove, 8 hours later.
8 hours later, right.
Keep that bloody glove in your mind because I want you to understand this. LA, nighttime, heat, cool, heat, blood dries.
That's what I'm saying. You talking West Coast. And if you've ever been out on the West Coast, you know that the days can be very warm, but it's a different type of atmosphere because you're talking about dry heat and dry cool.
That's correct. Okay, now quit dinging me. Here you go, because I'm gonna hit you right now because I see you typing all your questions. I'm gonna hit you right now. Here on the point right here. Okay, for everybody to understand this. So you won't have no thing. Van Adders go to a judge because now they got to get a search warrant.
Right.
Because now they have entered to what they think is a suspect in a double homicide
in a mass murder.
Who can face the death penalty. This is a death penalty case now,
right.
Okay? They go to the judge. Van Adder misleads and misinformed the judge.
He didn't just flat out lie. He misled. And
right. Misinformed the judge on the
oh my Lord.
On the affidavit to obtain the search warrant. Okay. Now, when you look at this and you asked about this, okay, he told the judge that OJ left unexpectedly. He told the judge that OJ had some things, and OJ left the state unexpectedly.
What?
Right. And then he also told the judge that they jumped the gate for the thinking that it was a crime scene.
Mass murder
Now
had
I'm
taken
going
place.
to I'm going to use Judge Ito's words for itself. So the guys that my LAPD homicide detective that's there giving me the blues over there, the judge himself said that Van Adder used a very, very misleading technique, and at best,
Him a no tell truth.
at best, he did not properly inform the judge what he was doing.
Him a no lie, but he no tell me whole truth.
Okay. The second misconduct charge to I'm going to bring back up into this case that we talked about that really was pointed out at the summit was Van Adder interviewed OJ for like 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
When OJ Simpson was notified of the crime, he came right back.
Right.
He didn't ask for a lawyer.
Nope.
He went downtown with the police.
Yes, he did.
He let him take the pictures of his fingers.
Yes, he did.
Remember the cuts on his fingers.
Mhm.
Okay. Then he went on and gave him an interview. Okay.
Sure did.
And he didn't do anything. Van Adder took blood from O.J. Simpson, a vial.
Yes, he did.
With 1.8 liters.
Mhm.
That's what they said.
That's
okay.
quite a bit of blood.
Now, instead of going downstairs on the floor below him and booking the blood into evidence at Parker Center,
What'd he do with it?
oh, this is the misconduct right here that my man from L.A., I want you to explain this to me, too. In the chat room, we have an LAPD homicide detective that we're...
Didn't he take it home with him?
Yeah. No, he didn't take it home. Well, we got some lot of stuff on the conduct. I ain't even done with that yet. He took a vial of OJ's blood out of Parker Center, went to the coroner's office and got some of Nicole Brown's blood and Ronald Goldman's blood.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have the head investigator got all three parties' blood in his possession, and he goes back to a crime scene with it. If that's not the most incompetent and police misconduct to my young man
One more time.
in L.A., to the L.A., explain to me how can you even get around that?
I'm
Okay.
not anti-police.
And you've been on the you've been a homicide detective team. Oh, now, wait a minute. In the chat room, know what he's telling me? No. He's conceding that's gross misconduct.
Gross misconduct.
Gross misconduct.
Not only is it misconduct, it's gross misconduct.
Right there, we're not even talking about going to trial yet. We're talking about right here. Now, in the prosecutor's misconduct, I go back because they had all this DNA. They thought they had a slam dunk case.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't expect OJ to fight it.
Right.
Okay. They didn't expect nobody to say nothing.
Right.
Okay.
They thought it was open and shut.
Right. Now we have a problem here when Van Adder does turn and book in the vial of evidence into booking. Okay. A liter and a half of the blood, what they say, 1.118 milliliter, or whatever it is missing.
Is missing.
Okay, so
It's
instead of having 8, you got 6.
So where did it go?
They can't explain it
Why can't they explain it?
because as Henry Lee say, something wrong.
I can explain it.
Oh yeah, we going there right there. We going back there. Okay,
I can explain it.
so right there, you got 2 law enforcement officers, 2 police officers, the lead detectives in the case that has totally, in my view, they set themselves up for failure.
Yeah, right there.
Because right then, the O.J. Simpson's defense crew, and I talked to some of them and read the books and stuff, immediately asked for a speedy trial. And they asked for a speedy trial for one reason.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, and SoundCloud. Thank you for joining us, social media.
Y'all?
We're talking about the O.J. Simpson case, finishing off our
Get in where you fit
Community Summit. This is our 3rd airing on the Community Summit, police reform or policing reform, and we're finishing it out with one of the cases that we didn't get to last week, and we're going to end this summit as we did the luncheon and the town hall of it this weekend and Monday. But the question is, Doug, right here is that when they asked for a speedy trial, the O.J. Simpson's attorneys was hoping that some of that DNA evidence wasn't going to be available at the time of trial.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so everybody's asking themselves, and since I done showed the LAPD people in the chat room,
gross misconduct.
Never. Now they give me thumbs up, so they saying cool.
I appreciate that.
we
fellas.
back cool.
And look, I'm not anti-police, but wrong is wrong. That's all I'm saying.
But we have to ask this question. I'm gonna ask this question here again to the chat room. Did LAPD sweeten the case? Okay. Because the case comes back into it. And when you look at this case, and we're gonna go right into it because we're in the top of the hour, and we gotta go take us a break, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about Mark Furman, and we're gonna talk about the evidence. Matter of fact, we're gonna let the break roll. We're gonna let the break roll. I just got the thing. We can let the break go and stay in this. Like to welcome our 17 cities, and we like to welcome San Francisco has just tied in with us from top of the hour.
San Fran.
And if you're on internet radio, thank you, Channel 172, for being with us on Stop the Madness. Keep it 100. I'm your host, Sean L. We're talking about the O.J. Simpson case right now and why this was the case that screamed out for police reform more than any other case that you have. And this was 23 years ago. And as we said, half the people that's listening to me or that's in the chat room or that was at the town hall, they wasn't even alive yet. And I'm talking about the police officers, because the average
We're
age
not
of the police
born
officers
yet.
that was at the town hall this weekend was 22 years old. This case is 23 years old.
23.
So they wasn't even born yet.
I
So
wasn't even here yet.
So let's go right here. We was talking about Van Adder with the vial in the blood.
Right. How
Now-
miraculously
Right.
he lost a couple of liters.
Right. So this is where
Over half of
this
what
is
he had.
this is where my question comes from. Did LAPD sweeten the case? We know that it was a high profile case. We know that everybody and their mother got enrolled and came to that area. We know that the chief, the deputy, everybody people who was even out of town was flying back in for this case. So you have to ask yourself this, and this is why you have to ask yourself, did O.J. Simpson actually kill no Brown Simpson, or was he framed? Okay, and I'm gonna say framed because I'm going to say this when I said did they sweeten the case. Here go the evidence that we're gonna talk about. The L.A. Officers back up there again. They want to hear this. The back gate on Bundy. When the criminals took the photos, there was no blood spots on the back gate.
Right.
3 weeks later, they go back out there and there's blood spots on the back gate. They call the criminals back out and they take the blood off of the back gate. Then they found blood on socks in OJ's house.
Mm-hmm.
But when the criminalist was videotaping the room before anybody went in there,
There was no bloody socks.
there was no socks on the floor where they are at in the picture.
Right.
Okay. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt when one of the detectives said they collected the socks. So we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt, said it. Okay.
Okay, maybe they did.
Now, remember the blood on the back gate at Bundy.
Blood on the black gate at Bundy.
Now, we're going to go to Rockingham. You got the mate to the bloody glove at Rockingham.
Right.
Okay. Found in a back gate area where maybe, about an inch path, 2 feet path or whatever.
Yeah, in a
With-
conspicuous.
right, where the air conditioning.
Conspicuous area.
Right, where the air conditioning.
Underneath an air
Remember
conditioning.
that blood. Remember where the glove was found, because we're going to come back to that. Okay.
In a very narrow walk path.
So that's
It wasn't even a walk path.
that's
it was a single
Rockingham.
path.
with the blood, okay? And the glove was found there. Then you go to the Bronco, okay?
Right.
You got that little inch spot on the door that they seen at 5:30 in the
Wasn't
morning.
even an inch spot.
Okay.
It was smaller than a dime, less than that, half the size of a pinky nail.
Then you got the blood inside the Bronco where they was driving.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got the blood on the passenger side, which
Right.
they still haven't explained if he killed these people and he was bloody as he's supposed to be and he was running from Bundy to Rockingham. What was he doing in the passenger side and the driver's side?
Absolutely.
So it goes back to two people theory, but they only saying one. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Then you have the Bronco that was not secured and towed, and you had what I call the seekers going in there, in and out the Broncos,
Right.
paying, because we're gonna
Right.
talk about one of the guys that went in on a police lot, went in the Bronco and said he was looking to buy it. Okay.
Right, right.
And okay, so we're gonna go back to that.
The mysterious guy.
Okay. Now, LAPD violated some of the most basic rules in evidence collection, and we went over that already. So that opened up the door right there. But this is the problem that I have, and that everybody, not only that I have it, Johnny Cochran and everybody else had it, and this is when they knew they had a sweet case. When the defense requested that all blood evidence be retested by the FBI, who did it the first time to make sure that the criminalists of the FBI tested it properly, they got bad news. Okay. And the prosecution knew this because the blood results changed.
Right.
Okay. Now, this is the question from Henry Lee, and the question that I have to ask everybody right here, and to my people from LA in the chat room. How did EDTA get in any blood sample on one of the crime scenes?
How?
I want all you homicide detectives sitting there answer that question, because I told you I did my homework. So I got some questions for you. So explain to us, how did EDT? EDT, for everybody listening to me, is a blood preservative used in a test tube. When you take the blood and they put it in that little tube, it has EDT in there, and the EDT mixed with the blood to preserve the blood to stop it from clotting. Okay,
right.
It's not.
It's an anticoagulant.
Right, it's not naturally developed. Okay, it doesn't naturally happen naturally. Now you can have EDT in your washing detergent. Depends on if you use certain detergent, you can't have EDT in there. But the question is this: if there's EDT in your clothes, all of your clothes have EDT. So that means if I touch this side of the sleeve, EDT, not just the blood spots. Okay.
If I test the collar, EDT.
Now, this is where police misconduct really comes in to be questioned. And like I told the guys, I'm in the chat room with LAPD, and I'm a 32-year veteran of the Cleveland Police Force. So we're gonna talk about this. EDT only came from O.J. Simpson's blood, and there's only one person who had O.J. Simpson blood, had Nicole Brown Simpson blood, and had Ronald Goldman's blood,
and that would be
Detective Van Adder.
Boom,
and he took it to a crime scene. So right then, that 100% case that the DA and them thought they had for DNA evidence, he opened up the door right then to have all that evidence thrown out.
Right.
He really opened up the door to have everything thrown out when he lied to the judge to get the search warrant.
He didn't lie. He misled.
Okay, you want to say misled? The judge said lie.
I'm not anti-police. I'm just
okay. Well, I don't want you to be anti-police. But Sax Man was here. I'd ask him, but he's not here.
Hey, Sax Man, I got a question. Well, never mind.
Okay, so let's go down now. Now we got the back gate. When the blood that wasn't on the back gate appeared on the back gate, and when that blood was tested, guess what it had?
EDT. Don't tell me
EDT.
EDT. No.
Then let's go to Rockingham.
That's
okay,
the truck.
That's the truck. Okay, well, no. We're gonna
Rockingham
go to
is the estate.
The estate.
That's the
estate. Broncos. The truck.
We done went from Bundy
to Rockingham now.
To Rockingham.
Now you look at Rockingham. You got the bloody glove.
OJ's house to the other house.
You got the bloody glove that is still wet and moist. The coroner, the chemist, and everybody, whoever they could get to talk about blood, has already said there's no way that glove was still sticky and wet 8 hours later unless it was placed in plastic or something.
Especially not on the West Coast, in L.A.,
then you had
salty air.
You seen the bloody scene, right? You seen the bloody scene.
Oh, yeah.
You have no blood on the trail.
None.
No blood on the wall.
None.
No blood where the glove was dropped at.
Not in the grass, not in the dirt.
And he was rushing to go in to change his clothes so he can get the limo and get on the thing, okay?
Right.
So remember that. Now, with the socks that had the blood spots, it had Nicole blood on there. It had Ronald Goldman's blood on there, okay? And those are the victims' victim blood. But there was one problem.
What was the problem?
When it was retested, they had EDT showed up again.
What?
And when the most famed pathologist, Dr. Henry Lee, and the prosecution, now he didn't do this by himself. Henry Lee and the prosecution.
Right.
Got a pair of socks. Okay. They did the test with dropping blood from a tube, because this is what O.J. Simpson's defense team said. that Van Adam planted it.
Right.
Okay, so there was no mistake about where they were going. They
Right.
said Van Adam planted this blood. That's why I got EDT in there.
Oh, they was an open book.
So when they did the test, they dropped it from a syringe on the on the socks, and they also went into an area and splashed it on the socks.
Right.
Now this is the problem with the with the socks. If the socks had splashes of blood on it, and somebody's foot was in there, it wouldn't go to the third level of the back of the sock.
Right.
Okay, they proved that
Because it would go to the skin of the
person
who's wearing the
who's
sock.
wearing the socks.
That's
But when
like
they
common sense.
but when they dropped the socks and they did the test with the blood tube, it soaked through because ain't nothing there to stop the blood from soaking
Soaking
through.
through,
So it
right.
soaked through all the way through,
to the floor.
which is impossible because if you get spots, if you spill something, you get spots on your socks or you get spots to splash up, it ain't gonna splash up in the same spot on the front of the thing or the back. Depends on where they hit it at.
Right.
Okay, it's not gonna be the same. But when they tested the OJ socks, the FBI said the spot is the same on the back side all the way through.
Exactly.
With EDTA. Okay. So that means that the socks that the prosecution had, they're out the window.
Yeah, that's got to go.
Let's go to the blood spots on the Bronco.
All right, let's go there.
That's the third crime scene. Blood spots on the Bronco, the third crime scene. So we're going to go there before we even get to where the juice is at, okay? Because I see LA looking for the juice, and we're going to give you the juice. Right there on the third in the Bronco, you had blood on the door up over where OJ had it cut at.
A speckle.
A speck, okay?
A speckle.
And it matches the grabbing the doorknob.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the problem that I have, and that everybody else have, and everybody I talk to about the case have. If OJ was fighting a black belt,
right,
Ron Goldman, and Ron Goldman's hands is all broken up and looked like he was punching a brick wall, OJ didn't even have a.
Where was the proof of the ass whooping on OJ? That's what I've been at. That's what I've been.
There you go. What right
That's
there?
What I've been
Look at the
on.
pictures. Everybody pull his pictures up on the internet. He has no black eyes, no broken nose,
no black eyes,
no broken ribs, no bruises nowhere.
And being a person that as coming up, I thought I was a badass, and I go out there and I've won quite a few fights. But even in the fights that I won, when people fought back, sometimes I didn't look like I won.
Okay, so look at this. Okay, so now in the Bronco, you got a mixture of blood, and this is something that actually called into question the blood in the Bronco.
Right.
Not saying that the blood wasn't there. I'm gonna give the LAPD. I'm not even gonna go into the stories what everybody said about being unsecured and this and that. I'm gonna go to the evidence like Dr. Henry Lee did.
Okay.
If OJ left there with all the blood mixed and got in the Bronco, then every blood spot in that Bronco should be mixed. It shouldn't be Nicole's blood here.
Right, because they found individual droplets of blood with different DNA in different spots.
Or smears.
Or smears.
And when you look
either way you want to put it, that's even worse if you find smears and it's not all mixed.
And I'm talking about good smears too.
Yeah.
So that means, how is it possible that you only got that dime spot on the outside of the door and all this blood on the inside?
If you didn't just been in a fight. Now, for y'all that ain't getting it, I'm gonna give it to you in plain, simple English. You done been into a fight with a first, second, third, or fourth degree black belt that's just as big as O.J. Simpson, because people want to say, okay, O.J. was a big boy. Yeah, but Ron Goldman was also a big boy, and if he was a black belt, they get into this scrap. Okay, Goldman loses, and unfortunately loses his life. However, after this fight, he's all bruised up, and his hands is like hamburger meat. And O.J. Simpson got all his blood all over him, on his socks, all over him. And he goes back to the Bronco, and he manages to meticulously, as he's rushing and fleeing away from a crime scene, manages to get a less than a dime-sized speck of blood as he's opening the door.
But the problem is that
yet when he gets inside the Bronco, it's full of blood smears everywhere, even on the passenger side. What? I'm not anti-police, but wrong is wrong.
Well, I'm like this, and I got the people in L.A. to say this for me. They found it good and good. So finally has got off their horse on the
Yeah,
evidence here.
please get down off
Because
the
I told
pony.
him I did my homework. So while we're in the chat room, I did my homework. Okay. So let's go right here. So now that blood evidence is in question right there.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So let's go into court now. Let's go into the court. Because we can go into the LA, the young man from LA homicide robbery division that was talking to me earlier and wanted to go into court and talk about this. We are now getting ready to go into court, and I want everybody else in the chat room to sit back and
Sit
let
back.
me and this young man Rob Harris deal with what he want to talk about right
Sit
here.
back and
So
relax, my
we gonna
love
go into
doctor.
court. They had OJ for being a wife beater,
A wife beater.
and they played the tapes.
Mm-hmm.
Then OJ teams came back with the racist police officer.
Mm-hmm.
They came back with the evidence was not properly collected.
Yeah, they
Okay,
did.
and the reason they said the evidence wasn't properly collected because when Fong, the SIU person for LAPD came,
Mm-hmm.
he didn't cover his feet. He didn't put on protective
Right.
clothing.
He didn't put on the booties. He didn't put on the
He
hazmat
didn't have
suit. He didn't
gloves.
put on the gloves.
And when they was collecting
He didn't
swatches,
put on the visor.
well, remember when they was collecting swatches,
Uh-huh.
okay, he was supposed the lab and the training requires you take your gloves off and put new
Right.
gloves on when you go to swap somebody else.
That's right.
He didn't test the blood on the Cole Simpson back, which
No,
could have
he
been
did
the
not.
blood of the killer.
Yes, it very well could have been. But
They
it was never tested.
when they tested the blood up on her fingernails. Remember they said that she scratched OJ and cut his fingers and stuff.
Right.
That was a blood part B, came back B,
Uh-huh.
B plus blood.
Uh-huh.
Doesn't match
Doesn't
OJ.
match OJ.
Doesn't match Nicole.
Didn't match Nicole,
Ryan
didn't
Goldman.
match Ryan Goldman.
So that put a third suspect on scene,
could have been the dog.
but they never tested it through the lab to see if they
No.
can get a match on somebody.
No, they didn't. What's that called? Oh man, I forgot what's that called. And I know exactly what you're talking about. What's
What-
that system called? That system that they run it through. Because
Well,
they
the
run-
FBI thing, right? The
yeah,
lab,
the
they didn't do that.
the FBI database that they run it through. They run the fingerprints and they run the DNA because it's in a database file. If you've done anything criminally wrong, your fingerprints
DNA
or your
DNA is on the
in
computer,
there,
right?
and it's gonna come
Well,
up.
well, they never even ran it. So let's go to Mark Furman here. Here you got
Oh,
a
boy.
seasoned detective,
Season
homicide detective,
homicide.
one of the best of the best.
One of the best.
And if he's
better
the
than the best.
and he knew he was good and the best of the best.
yeah, he did.
Now, before the
Like
prosecution,
my mama would have said he was too smart for his own damn
right, he was too
good.
smart. We're gonna break it down. And this is for the guy for the LA homicide robbery detective in the chat room. San Francisco, I want everybody on the West Coast. Here you go. Don't chime in on this. It's just me and him gonna talk, and here we go.
Y'all stand back and let him spar.
Okay. Mark Furman, your best homicide detective, was told to stand down, and he no longer had the case. Okay.
Mhm.
Then he went to another crime scene, but this is the problem. F. Lee Bailey got some information that Mark Furman was a racist. Okay. The prosecution knew some information that Mark Furman was a racist.
That's right.
In interviewing him, one of the prosecution's investigators, who was the top investigator in the office at the time, told them not to use Mark Furman as the lead detective or anybody in the case because he had some serious problems.
Right.
Okay. The prosecution knew about his personnel file. We talked about that in the
Early.
summit about personnel files being used in high police profile cases. I think it's wrong, and I think that set the tone of the case. But in the OJ's case, that might have been the proper move for that public release because without that, nobody would have known what Mark Furman was trying to do.
Right.
Okay, and I'm going to say what he was trying to do because of two reasons. If he's a top-notch homicide detective, when he got on the stand and he knew that the judge had already ruled that there would be no racial talk or any police officers framing anybody brought into court unless they could prove it. And they couldn't prove it. Okay?
Right.
OJ's team couldn't prove it.
Right.
But when Mark Furman got on the stand and Left Lee Belly and Johnny Cochran set him up.
He wasn't even worried about it.
No, because they set him up.
Yeah.
They got that letter, the same letter that the lady wrote that the prosecution have alleging what Mark Furman told her when she first met him that really frightened her.
Right.
Okay, and they attacked that lady when he got on the stand first. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
And they tried to build him up to the point that he didn't know her, she was lying on him, and everything else.
Right.
But this is my problem right here, and this is to the L.A. homicide detective in the chat room with me right now. If Mark Furman was one of your top damn best law enforcement officers, had a maximum 100% conviction rate,
Best of the best.
why in the hell would he get on a stand knowing that he got paid to with tapes and that he talked to people? Because why would he lie?
Too smart for his own.
Okay,
damn good.
because all he had to do when F. Lee Bailey asked him, "Have you ever called somebody the N word?" All he had to do was say, "Yes,
Yes,
I have." In the heat of arguing or the heat of the moment, okay, and then all that
Doing
information,
some research,
right,
in order to produce a
But-
screenplay.
but
a
all that
book,
information,
a
wait a
novel.
minute, from the judge's ruling, none of that other information would have been admissible in court. But the minute he said no. And he lied,
He tripped up.
no, he didn't trip up. He said no and lied knowingly. He knew he was lying.
Oh, he knew he was lying,
And-
but that's where they got.
But he knew then, he's supposed to know as being a top-notch police officer, that opened the door up for Johnny, Blue, Jack, everybody and their mama to come in, because now they have to impeach his character. And impeaching
Right.
his character put the whole trial.
Put the entire trial and the entire
Now,
LAPD
on trial.
on trial.
Now, let me tell you where the case fell apart at with Mark Furman. And this is to my boy right here, Mr. Harris. I'm glad you're still with us. Hey, wait a minute. He looked at me right now and he says Furman is the devil. Okay, so we do agree on something, that Furman hurt law enforcement officers all over the country. So we do agree on that.
And
we got
again,
agreement.
Again, to all my law enforcement out there, I am not anti-police,
Well,
but
Everybody
wrong
know.
is wrong is
Everybody
wrong.
know that I ain't anti-police. So
But I got to
it's
see.
about
You
good-
ain't got to state that. I
Okay.
got to state that.
So-
I am not anti-police.
Let's go right here. So this is what happened when Furman lied on the stand. Then came into question of Furman and his investigation when he was at Bundy. Furman said that he never entered the crime scene at Bundy, and he never seen the glove and the hat
Are you sure about that,
until he found the glove at Rockingham.
Mr. Furman? Are you absolutely sure about that?
Yes,
You
I'm sure about that, sir.
You're just sure you just lied about not saying the N word.
Now, when he said he never seen the glove and he never entered the crime scene, they showed him a photo. F. Lee Bailey did. And F. Lee Bailey asked him, when was this photo taken? He said, oh, that photo was taken at 7:30 when I came back from Rockingham.
But I thought, Mr. Furman, that you had never been on a crime scene.
Then you have to look at this. The prosecution knew, but they did not tell the defense, and they still let him get up there to lie. Because the photoist said that he took the photo at 3:30. That's an hour and a half before he went to Rockingham.
Yep.
And it shows Mark Furman in the crime scene pointing at the bloody glove.
Yep.
So there go the prosecution theory that they told the jury, that he didn't have an opportunity to get the glove, and he wasn't in the crime scene where the glove was
never
at.
there.
So there go lie number 2.
Lie deuce.
Now, number 3 is when they get to Rockingham. Remember, they said they jumped the gate, jumped the wall because they thought
jumped over the wall because they thought that
the
a mass murder had occurred.
Right, because of that little blood spot. But this is the problem right here. Mark Furman was relieved, and I'm going to keep coming back to this, Harris. He was relieved of an investigation. You had a new investigator put in there. Why was he going on his own investigating something? And it comes back to the Bronco. Why was he down there messing with somebody's car when he's supposed to be making notification?
Because I'm a police officer and I got to do my
Why,
job.
why did he interview Kayla Kalin and didn't tell the lead investigator?
Because I'm a police officer and I got to do my job.
Why did he walk out on the Rockingham estate for 15 minutes by himself and didn't tell nobody where he was going?
Because I'm trying to set somebody up.
Well, that's what it is. Okay, and I'm just going to have to say this. Furman, and as Furman went down, so did the O.J. Simpson case.
And so did the O.J. Simpson
So
case.
you come back around with the blood evidence, the glove. At this point, I'm going to ask you right there, the detective from LAPD, tell me what you want to ask and tell me what you think. Well, as I go back into this right here, we're going to take a little break and then we're going to finish it off. We got to go and pay some bills.
Hey, Thirst, can I try out a few Coke Summer sound effects on you? Yes. Cool. You okay with this? Yes. And this? Yes. And what about this? Yes. Ha! Gotcha there, Thirst. That wasn't sound effects. That was a Coke. I'm no longer thirsty. You're so out of here. Coca-Cola.
Taking a family of 5 to the amusement park can cost a small fortune.
Oh, yeah. So to save some money, we thought, hey, let's bring the amusement park to us. Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. Step right up, young man. Are you ready to ride the wacky waterfall?
That's just the bathtub with the shower head running.
Nope, it's the wacky waterfall.
It's the shower, Dad.
Waterfall.
Wacky.
There's an easier way to save. To get a free rate quote, go to geico.com. Then buy online, over the phone, or at your local Geico.
And now back to John with the weather.
Yes, Andy. Tonight, a big storm. Storm this! Get the soccer offer from Pizza Hut and Pepsi. With every 2 medium pan Super Supreme, you get a real soccer ball and 4 cans of Pepsi for free. Yes, a real soccer soccer ball and 4 cans of Pepsi for free! Don't miss the Pizza Hut and Pepsi soccer offer. With every 2 medium pan Super Supreme, you get a real soccer ball and 4 cans of Pepsi for free. What about the weather, Eddie? Don't resist and call 19,000 now.
Hello?
Hello, sir. I hear you having problems putting together your new kitchen unit.
Oh, yeah, the instructions say that.
What now?
The instruction manual. It makes absolute...
Stop reading that.
Well, what would you suggest I use?
I suggest you use the fact you're a man.
Huh?
Guys who got pride never relied on no guide, sucker. I'll give you some step-by-step instructions. Buy Snickers, remove wrapper, bite chocolate, and get some nuts.
Go to GetSomeNuts.tv for more Snickers man coaching.
You've been tuned in to Stop the Madness, keeping it 100 on STMK Radio 100. And now back to your host one more time, Sean L., Let, and Tone the Stone.
Welcome back to Stop the Madness, Keep It 100. We was finishing up and we was talking about myself and LAPD homicide robbery investigator in the chat room. We was talking about Mark Furman and some of the facts of the case, of the O.J. Simpson case, finishing up from our community summit on police reform and policing reform. But let me say this about Mark Furman. Mark Furman not only damaged law enforcement officers, he disgraced himself, he disgraced the LAPD, and he disgraced every police officer who ever wore the badge. So let's not make no mistake about that. He was charged with felony perjury out of the OJ's case. He had to resign. He had to go on 2-year probation, and he was fined $200. But I want to talk about the man who set everything up right there, the late, great Johnny Cochran. Johnny was the man, okay? And I'm going to have to say this, Doug. Johnny was the man, okay? Because when you look at Johnny Cochran, when he sat in there, Johnny Cochran used to be a prosecutor for the L.A. District Attorney's Office.
That's correct.
So he knew the insight of what the District Attorney's Office was capable of doing, what they wasn't capable of doing, and how they was going to go about doing it.
Absolutely.
So he requested a speedy trial.
Yes, he did.
Which means that they had to put OJ on trial within 300 days.
That's right.
And
right
the reason he requested the speedy trial is because he didn't want all that DNA evidence to come back.
Right.
Because they didn't know how messed up that DNA evidence was.
Right.
Okay.
And that gave them that took away their opportunity to fix and correct their mistakes to make it look really, really bad.
Not only that, that made them rush their case. But
absolutely,
L.A. District Attorney's Office knew the problems they had, so they're not a victim, and I'm not going to make them a victim. They knew what they had, they knew the players they had, they knew the cars they had, and they chose to play.
Yeah.
Okay, Darden told them don't use Furman.
Yeah.
But
I mean, he was very.
But
adamant about
Johnny psyched Darden twice. Okay.
Yeah, he did.
He psyched him to put Furman on the stand because he told him if you don't put him on the stand, I'm going to put him on the stand. Okay? So he made them, they should have made the defense call him.
Yep.
Because he made them put him on the stand.
Again, things could have played out differently.
Right, because that lie wouldn't have been there. Because the jurors actually was with the prosecutor until they had to take Furman out. Well, okay, Furman showed that he had a chance to plant the glove. Furman showed that he had a chance to went out by himself. Everything Furman did didn't make no sense. Everything Van Adder did didn't make no sense. Okay,
Right.
Van Adder couldn't explain what he was doing. Lane couldn't come back because Lane left bloody shoes in the chemist's trunk
in the chemist in the trunk of the chemist's vehicle.
vehicle for 24 hours.
Yes, he
Okay,
did.
and they had the letter that
Yep.
they didn't want to go, and they got the tapes,
Yeah.
and they couldn't get the tapes in court. This is how good Johnny was.
Johnny played them, I'm not giving extra credit to what he did, but he played them like a fiddle.
I'm giving him Johnny all the good thing.
he-
Johnny did a
he-
Mozart
he-
on their ass.
Man, he played them like
Because-
a fiddle. And this was not a personal vendetta because, I mean, a lot of people don't even realize Johnny Cochran was not, even though he was on the Dream Team, he was not given the lead on the Dream Team. He actually took the lead.
That's correct. But you have to look at this also. With all the problems, the blood evidence, Furman's and the chance to plant the glove. Do you?
Cato Kalin.
I think that OJ was. I'm gonna have to say this after going through all this everything. OJ was an innocent man. I'm not gonna say he wasn't on the crime scene, okay? But OJ didn't do the killings. It's impossible to say it.
Excuse me. I don't see how it was physically possible for him to carry out the crime the way that it was carried out. It wasn't possible.
But not only that, the timeline doesn't match.
No.
Okay. And then you have to look at the situation also is that when Kalen also told OJ he heard the thumps, okay?
Right.
Because the guy just said this in the chat room. But when Kalen said he heard the thumps, OJ, the limo driver, and Kalen went looking.
Right.
OJ called him back and gave him the code to the house to put the alarm on.
Yes, he did.
And the problem with that was another lie that Van Adder told, and this is coming from a police officer in the chat room, was that Van Adder said that they left OJ's daughter's house and went into OJ's house.
Right.
OJ's daughter said no, they couldn't have done that, and we found out that wasn't the truth
lie.
because they had to go around the front because Kalen put the alarm on and they couldn't get the key,
get
the key to turn the
work.
alarm
That's
off,
right.
and they had to go around. So Johnny Cochran, his last words and his summation and his argument, I mean, he ate the prosecution alive.
Yes, he did.
Now, I'm going to say they won.
He put them in their
check.
place.
I'm going to say 3 things happened in the OJ case that everybody need to go back out and look at and read the books and go to YouTube and look at all this, is that Barry Check, when he took the DNA and took it apart, that was a critical moment in the case.
Yeah.
Then when F. Lee Bailey set and Johnny Cochran made a plan to set Mark Furman up in order to just kill his credibility and get those tapes before the jury. That was the goal. Okay.
That was the goal.
That was the goal. And at the end, when Johnny Cochran so craftfully got that was I'm going to say this. If I ever have to have a lawyer, I got to get Johnny. He's dead, the great late Johnny Cochran.
His firm.
But, Johnny Cochran talked.
He was poetic. Absolutely. I mean, the man was, he was the Denzel Washington of lawyers.
And I want all y'all to, if you on social media and you didn't come into, we got a treat for you. I mean, this is a treat for everybody. And I want everybody to understand this. Go to STMK Radio 100 Facebook page. Click on the Ustream app. You got 3 minutes to get there. We have Johnny Cochran's 16-hour summation before the jury broke down in all of his high points. And once you hear this, you would never, ever again think lightly of things. Because I want to say this in closing, that I'd like to thank all the police officers, the judges, lawyers, politicians, you, the community, for attending our community summit and for being with us on our policing reform town hall. And I'd like to thank all of y'all, because if it wasn't for you, we could have never made that work. And I want to say this to all my law enforcement officers and buddies. Police officers are the protectors of the Constitution. You cannot fail, okay? Because when you fail, the system fails. And that means that you have to do better policing so we won't have officers like Mark Furman in the police ranks making everybody look bad. Because as somebody said, there's something about a bad apple that eventually affects the whole barrel, and you got to throw the whole barrel out. Okay? So everybody think about that when you start talking about police misconduct and police reform, because when police reform come, if you don't do it and set it up so you can work with it, it's going to be forced down your throat, and you're going to have to deal with it when it happens. And you're not going to like the taste of it. And when you are the protector of the Constitution says one thing, that all men are created equal, okay? And you're going to have to stand up, and the community is going to have to stand up, and everybody's going to have to show some integrity and going to have to do the job properly and work with each other. And the community is going to have to stand behind its law enforcement officers and stand up so you can be the lead. And I'd like to thank everybody for joining us on Facebook Live, YouTube, SoundCloud, and everybody else. And I'm going to let the great late Johnny Cochran take us out, and I'm going to try to pump it into the studio so if you're on Facebook or one of the social medias, you can hear it.
If people take away from this case some lessons about the police and about crime labs that really ought to be reckoned with, then maybe some good will come out of this. If we learn something more about race and the criminal justice system and the way we perceive things as a country, and something good comes of this discussion, then maybe there'll be some positives. In terms of the way this case was covered by the media and respect for the dignity of the courts and the process, I think we've got some serious trouble.
About being anti-police. You saw the police you could believe, and you now know the ones you can't believe. And anybody who believes that all police are perfect, that they don't lie, that they don't have the same biases and racism that the rest of society has, is living in a dream world. So this is not for the faint of heart. This is not for the timid. As I said, this is for the courageous who understand what the Constitution is all about. Officers came out to Bundy and Rockingham. Maybe more than 30. You think that of those number of officers, that maybe one of them, maybe one of the patrol officers could have went to give the notice? It took all 4 detectives, all 4 LAPD experienced detectives to leave the bodies. They had notified the coroners. They didn't have a criminalist to go over to notify O.J. Simpson. Who's fooling who here? This is preposterous. They're lying. Trying to get over that wall, to get in that house. You don't believe so? You're talking about saving lives? Before this trial started, if you grow up in this country, you know there are affirmatives out there. You learn early on in your life that you're not going to be naive, that you love your country, but you know it's not perfect. So you understand that. So it's no surprise to me, but I don't take any pride in it. But for some of you, you're finding out the other side of life. You're finding out. That's why this case is so instructive. You're finding out about the other side of life. But things aren't always as they seem. It's not just rhetoric. It's the actions of people. It's the lack of courage. It's the lack of integrity at high places. That's what we're talking about here. Credibility doesn't attach to a title or position. It attaches to the person. So the person who may have a job where he makes $2 an hour can have more integrity than the highest person. It's something from within. It's in your heart. It's what the Lord has put there. That's what we're talking about in this case. And so why don't they speak out? Why do they take him to their breast? Compare how our prosecutors treat Furman as opposed to Cato Kalin. Look at how they treated Mark Partridge as opposed to Cato Kalin. Look at how they embraced him. And now they want to distance themselves. These same people say, oh, he's not important. But the Rocard photograph puts the lie to that. He is very important. And what becomes so important when we talk about these two twin demons of evil? But America's worst nightmare. Why would they all turn their heads and try to cover for him? Why would you do that if you're sworn to uphold the law? There is something about corruption. There's something about a rotten apple that will ultimately infect the entire barrel. Because if the others don't have the courage that we'd ask you to have in this case, people sit silently by. We live in a society where many people are apathetic. They don't want to get involved. And that's why all of us, to a person in this courtroom, have thanked you from the bottom of our hearts. Because you know what? You haven't been apathetic. You're the ones who made a commitment toward justice. And it's a painful commitment. But you got to see it through. Your commitment, your courage, is much greater than these police officers. This man could have been off the force long ago if they'd done their job, but they didn't do their job. People looked the other way. People didn't have the courage. One of the things that has made this country so great is people's willingness to stand up and say, that's wrong. I'm not going to be part of it. I'm not going to be part of the cover-up. That's what I'm asking you to do. Stop this cover-up. Stop this cover-up. If you don't stop it, then who? You think the police department's going to stop it? You think the DA's office is going to stop it? You think we can stop it by ourselves? It has to be stopped by you. His lack of credibility, his lying, racist views, then Ron Phillips, his supervisor, who apparently chose to look the other way, and I'm sure he's as embarrassed as anybody else by this disgrace firmly. So it's important at the outset that we understand the role of Phillips, as we need to understand the role of Van Anner. He was the one allegedly given this order by Bushy to go over and give the death notification. Didn't comply with it till much later that time. And you know, you can't fault people for being naive. But once they know, if they continue to be naive, then you can fault them. That's what it is, and that's why this case is important. Don't ever say again in this county or in this country that you don't know things like this exist. Don't pretend to be naive anymore. Don't turn your heads. Stand up. Show some integrity.
Fan base is big, I can't lose. Jigger bow down, I'm the next to rule, but I'ma stay on the cool, remain on the under, cause like Andre 3000, your boy's ice cold. Ain't no limit to the gimmicks and ways to make money. No limit to the just to act funny when you get that cake, cause you spit that way. They may love you tomorrow when they hate you today, but yo, that's the way the story goes, so I was told. Following the rainbow down the yellow brick road, please believe at the end ain't no pie to go. Just some platinum beats from the Cleveland streets.
You ain't never ever seen a gangster quite like me.
You know I don't give them, and never gave them. I'm just living it up.
No, I hold it down, baby, because I'm certified G.
I'm just living it up. The money can't go with me, so I'm spending it up.
Money ain't no problem, still love and living comfortably.
Never giving it up. I made it all on my own. You ain't getting above.
You've been listening to Stop the Madness, Keep It 100 on STMK Radio 100.